Asian folklore. The tales of the Kumiho, sometimes known as the Gumiho. A faint orange hue illuminated the once pitch-black forest, cutting a path for the lone traveler. Instinctively, he walked towards the light source, taking careful steps in an attempt not to injure himself on stray pebbles or twigs. Pak Munsu had been warned about the creatures that roamed the forest at night, but with no other options, the lost man conceded to its enamor. Captivated, he moved deeper and deeper into the forest, following the soft glow as it grew brighter and brighter. Until finally, he was met with the yellow shimmer of a burning candle, its flame housed in a lantern. Munsu's gaze shifted upwards, his eyes landing on the obscure figure of the lantern's owner. As his eyes adjusted to the brightness, he sucked in a breath, completely stunned. Before him stood a beautiful woman, her long black hair rustling slightly in the breeze, brushing across her face. A face of which was blessed with alluring brown eyes, its orbs glistening in the light of the fire, plump lips whose corners tugged itself up into a smirk. A silk hanbo was wrapped around her figure, and although they were in the forest, it was oddly clean. "Hello there, are you lost?" Her voice was low and bewitching, and yet it sent shivers down Munsu's spine. He gulped. As they conversed, he felt an odd feeling bubbling in his chest. The longer he stared at her, the worse it got. Her orbs were enchanting, but when he looked past her eyes, he noticed oddities. Her nose was sharp, almost like a snout, her hair flashed shades of orange and brown, and he could have sworn he saw something pointy peeking out from the top of her head. Shaking his head, the images went away immediately, gaining reason to believe he was hallucinating. Was he that tired? "Okay, follow along," she said. Silence fell in the shrouded forest as the two walked as if it was holding its breath. Dazed, Pak Munsu followed the mysterious girl, cautiously trailing her every step. As they headed deeper and deeper, a tingling sensation grew along his back. Munsu's eyes gazed at her figure, the cloth of her dress swaying as she walked. His eyes caught sight of fur protruding from herself. He looked away, but it was still there, and that's when he remembered. As if sensing he had stopped, the girl turned her head to see his frozen figure, a small smirk lighting up her face. "Yura," he trailed off, unsure of what to say, his fear only bringing her amusement. Her grin widened further until a malicious smirk graced her face. This short excerpt is inspired by the Korean myth of Pak Munsu and the Kumiho, featuring a creature in Korean literature and folklore, the Gumiho, Gumiho. If you have never heard of this relatively popular character, the Gumiho, whose translation means nine-tailed fox, is a fox that can freely transform into, among other things, a bewitching girl that seduces men. Sure, its appearance across various Korean oral tales depicts the creature as a demoness, whose goals are power and death. It is believed that a fox turns into a Gumiho after living for 1,000 years, and Gumihos are the only foxes to kill humans with their bare hands. Unlike its related counterparts, the kitsune in Japan, and the huli jing in China, Gumihos are usually always depicted as purely evil, especially in more modern myths. They hunt down their prey and eat their heart or their liver, depending on the myth, as it is believed to be the life force or energy of the human. To achieve this goal, many foxes transform into humans, in particular, a woman to lure unsuspecting humans, although there is one tale, the maiden who discovered a Kumiho through a Chinese poem, where the Kumiho transforms into a man to trick a maiden. However, these transformations are never entirely perfect, with something persistently fox-like about the person. Uniquely, the most distinct feature of a Gumiho is the existence of a yowu gaseu, yeouzeu, which is a fox marble, that is believed to hold the knowledge and power of the Gumiho, and they use this to absorb human energy. However, if someone else manages to get hold of the yowu gaseu, they gain knowledge and power over the Gumiho it came from. While many of these myths were passed on orally, some of them were written down. These legends can be found in the Compendium of Korean Oral Literature, which actually contains some pretty interesting stories. One of which was mentioned before, Pak Munsu and the Kumiho. This tale follows a man, Pak Munsu, who encounters a fox-like girl living in the woods. Some other well-known myths include transformation of the Kumiho, where a Gumiho crashes a wedding by transforming into a bride, the king, and the Kumiho, which follows a king as he meets a girl in the woods and agrees to save her indebted father, as well as the maiden who discovered a Kumiho through a Chinese poem, a story of a Gumiho who changes into a man as an attempt to lure a maiden but was revealed when a dog caught its scent and attacked. But where did this mythical creature come from? And how was it passed down through hundreds of generations of oral myths? The Kumiho in Korean mythology are a type of spirit, albeit an evil one. Whereas the Japanese kitsune are often portrayed as actual foxes that grow more and more tails and gain magical abilities as they age, the Kumiho are nine-tailed spirits through and through. There is no moment early in the Kumiho's life when it has fewer tails or lesser powers. The usual victim of the Kumiho is usually a young man she has seduced and tricked into marriage. However, that's not always the case. For example, in the emperor's Kumiho daughter-in-law, Kumiho marries the emperor's son. Instead of feasting on his flesh and energy, however, the Kumiho instead targeted unsuspected people in the emperor's court. In essence, the Kumiho was using her marriage to the emperor's son to get access to not one but multiple gullible men. As more and more people had started disappearing, the emperor tasked the tale's hero with finding and killing the Kumiho, which is exactly what happened. The Kumiho and kitsune are similar, but not the same. They can appear the same at first glance, but the Korean and Japanese nine-tailed fox spirits have multiple key differences. Kumiho are almost always malevolent, whereas kitsune are more morally ambiguous. They can be evil as well as good or neutral. Kitsune's tails are said to be a bit shorter and the claws on their hands are longer than those of the Kumiho. The ears can also differ. Kitsune always have fox ears on the top of their heads, even when they are in human form. They never have human ears. Kumiho, on the other hand, always have human ears and may or may not have fox ears. Kumiho also tend to have fox paws for feet, while kitsune have a weird mix of human-like and fox-like feet. Overall, the kitsune has a more feral appearance than the Kumiho. Kumiho spirits also often carry a yowu gaseul marble or bead in their mouths. This bead is the very thing that gives them their magical powers and intelligence. Some kitsune stories also portray them with such an item, but not nearly as often as Kumiho spirits. Some believe that the Korean Kumiho myth came from the kitsune myth after the Japanese invasion of Korea at the end of the 16th century, known as the Imjin Wars. That would explain why Koreans view Kumiho spirits as strictly evil. However, that 16th century invasion lasted for only 6 years, so it's more likely that the myth was transferred more gradually and even before the war, with the many interactions between the two countries over the years. Alternatively, it might have come from the Chinese influence and their nine-tailed huli jing mythological creature. As with the kitsune, there are quite a few differences between the Korean Kumiho and the Chinese huli jing. The huli jing is more morally ambiguous, just like a kitsune, while a Kumiho is almost always evil. A huli jing is also often portrayed with human feet, while Kumihos have fox paws for feet. The huli jing's tails tend to be shorter than those of the Kumiho, but not quite as much as those of the kitsune. Huli jing are also described with denser and coarser coats, while the Kumiho and the kitsune have soft coats that are nice to the touch. Huli jing also often have fox paws instead of hands, while Kumiho have human hands. In essence, the features on their hands and feet are reversed in most depictions. The traditional human-like form of the Kumiho is that of a young maiden. That's because they can be most effective in that form. It makes it as easy as possible to seduce their victims. However, a Kumiho can take other forms too. For example, in the hunter and the Kumiho myth, a hunter encounters a nine-tailed fox gnawing on a human skull. Before he could attack the fox, the animal transformed into an old woman, the same old woman whose skull it was eating, and ran away. The hunter chased it only to catch up to it in the nearby village. The Kumiho had gone to its victim's home and pretended to be the old woman in front of her children. The hunter then warned the children that this wasn't their mother and chased the Kumiho away. It's not explicitly said that a Kumiho can't be a man, however, it doesn't seem to happen all that often. The only myth we know of where a Kumiho transformed into a man is the maiden who discovered a Kumiho through a Chinese poem. The Kumiho turns into a young man and tricks a maiden into marrying him. We can't find another similar story. However, everywhere else, the genders of the Kumiho and its prey are reversed. The most famous ability of this nine-tailed fox is her ability to transform into a beautiful, young woman. In that form, the Kumiho tends to seduce and trick men to do their bidding or to try and kill them. Kumiho loves to feast on human flesh, particularly on people's hearts and livers. It's said that Kumiho spirits even wander cemeteries to dig out fresh corpses when they haven't been able to seduce and kill a living person. Kumiho can also use the magical Yowu Gaseul marble in their mouths to absorb people's vital energy via a deep kiss of sorts. However, if someone is able to take and swallow the Kumiho's Yowu Gaseul marble during that kiss, the person not only won't die but will get incredible knowledge of the sky, land, and people. Symbols and symbolism of Kumiho. Kumiho spirits represent both the dangers that lurk in the wilderness as well as people's fear of young pretty maidens seducing them with malicious intent. The latter can feel a bit silly from today's point of view, but most ancient cultures have myths about the evil of beautiful women who can break families apart or get young men into trouble. In essence, the Kumiho myth combines the distrust people had toward beautiful young women and their anger toward the wild foxes that constantly raided their hen houses and properties. Additionally, if the Kumiho myth really made its way into Korea from Japan, this can explain why Kumiho are always evil. In Japanese mythology, the nine-tailed kitsune are often morally neutral or even benevolent. However, given that the Korean people likely harbored quite a bit of disdain for the Japanese at certain times in history, they might have just twisted this Japanese myth into an evil version of it. Importance of Kumiho in modern culture. Nine-tailed foxes can be found all over modern pop culture. Eastern manga and anime are full of such characters, as are a lot of video games and TV series. Even the West uses this unique mythological creature more and more as inspiration for various fictional characters. However, because of the similarities between Kumiho, kitsune, and huli jing, it's often difficult to figure out which mythological creature a certain character is based upon. Take Ari, for example, a character from the famous MOBA video game League of Legends. She is a beautiful and magical seductress with fox ears and 9 long fox tails. However, she doesn't seem to have fox paws on either her feet or her hands. Additionally, she is mostly portrayed as a positive or a morally ambiguous character. This would suggest that she is more based on the kitsune myth rather than the Kumiho myth. At the same time, many people in Korea insist she is based on a Kumiho spirit. So, is it fair to say she's based on both? Nevertheless, there are many other examples of characters based on Kumiho, kitsune, or huli jing. Some of the most famous ones include the 1994 horror film The Fox with Nine Tails, an episode of HBO's 2020 TV series Lovecraft Country, the 2010 SBS drama My Girlfriend is a Gumiho, and many others. The Korean Kumiho nine-tailed fox spirits are as captivating as they are complex and confusing. They are very similar to the Japanese kitsune and the Chinese huli jing spirits, so much so that it's not 100% clear which myth was first. Regardless, the Kumiho are unique to their other Asian counterparts in their unparalleled maliciousness and seemingly never-ending hunger for human flesh. Their most famous trick is to shapeshift into beautiful women and lure unsuspecting men to their deaths, but these magical foxes can do quite a bit more than that.
The Kumiho appears in ancient Korean folktales, but stories of this yucca fox are abundant in popular culture, particularly in Korean television drama.